Hello and welcome. We would like to speak to you about our Moodle Quiz and Question Bank project we have ongoing since Moodle 4.0. Some of you might have heard of it, some other won't. Anyhow, along this presentation, we have prepared some questions ongoing we would like you to look at and maybe answer during your speech. And we will look up the answers at the end. It's a simple vocab, those 6 letters. Here's our agenda, and we'll start right away with the project overview. Since we spoke to you last in September 22, a year ago, Moodle 4.1 and Moodle 4.2 has been released. We talk shortly on what of our developments did make it into those versions, but we wanted to state clearly that the 4.2 developments were smaller than the other steps we have been able to accomplish. And this due to the fact that we reorganized internally and we switched our development partner from Catalyst AU to Catalyst EU, which took us some time resources during winter and spring. But who's that aforementioned we? We, that's a lot of institutions backing us with funds. And the initiators? Precisely those 4 people, Tim, Thomas, myself, and Antonia, who does lead the project lead. In Moodle 4.3, we will be able to land one of our architectural base issue. The filtering conditions in question banks now do use the same user interface as participant filtering does. Then we are allowing for some more flexibility to customize the question bank for teachers and some other technical improvements. But let me show you what the first 2 bring to the user. Here you see that the question bank filtering condition can concatenate now and multiple one of these as well, and use the same user interface that you know from the participant page. Thus, it is possible to drill down to the questions you want in even more detail than before. Bonus point, if you have drilled down in all that detail as you wish, the filters are persisted within the URL and you can share that link so that the other person receiving it and opening the link has got the same filter criteria in front of them. The same user interface elements are also there where you add a question to a quiz. Teacher can now rearrange the columns of a question bank, remove columns or resize them in width based on their proper needs. This is implemented and integrated in Moodle as we speak, which makes us the most actual speech, which is the reason why you should vote us for us best speech, of course. In this slide, you see some more aspect that we have been able to get into Moodle 4.3. But there's still one main part we are working hard to get done. And that is the possibility to make questions which are in a question bank in a course shareable to other places. And with that, I would like to hand over to Tim.
Thank you very much, Luca. Yes, when we started this project, all these various ideas we had for improving the question bank, we thought we might achieve in Moodle 4.0, and it's taken a little bit longer than that. But I think as we've worked on it, our ideas have improved. But as Luca says, one of our key goals right from the start was improving the ability for teachers to share questions between courses. And while we've done a lot of other features that will make that easier to implement, we still haven't actually done that key part. And what I'm going to explain now is what we think is the right way to implement that part. And the reason I'm talking to you now before it's done is we think we have a good idea, but we're not absolutely sure. So after we've explained what we're currently thinking, we would very much like your feedback. Are we on the right track? Or do we need to think again? Do we need to improve it? So before we talk about what we're thinking about for the future, it's probably best to make sure we are all aware of what currently exists in Moodle today. And What currently exists in Moodle is what has been there since the time of Moodle 1.9, which is more than 10 years ago, and no one's worked on this. So what exists for sharing questions between courses in Moodle 1.9 is only available if you have an elevated role like admin or manager. And if you have one of these roles or a custom role and go into the question bank, then what you will see is, as well as the questions for this quiz and this course, you will also be able to see shared areas of question bank at the system level and the course category level. And as I say, one problem with this, it's only accessible to people with elevated roles. And if you have elevated roles to access these areas, suppose you have permissions to access questions in the system area, then because of how Moodle permissions work, that means you have permission to access every question in every course in the Moodle site, which may not be exactly what you want unless you really, really trust all your users. There's another problem that there is only one system area, so if you have different groups of people who would like to be able to share questions throughout the site, you don't really have a way to do that. So that's what exists today. And it has these problems, which are basically what I just said. By the way, the slides are not appearing on this screen down here. I don't know if there's anything we can do about that. The other big problem with the current system is that if you use it, there are some nasty bugs which happen when you back up and restore courses. And within the current framework, various people have tried to fix this, and they have not succeeded. So it's kind of an inherent limitation of the current system, which makes it a bit dangerous to use the sharing features, which is a problem. So this is where we are today. And thinking back to Marie's talk about the Moodle development process, I mean, in proposing a new feature, there are several steps. There's sort of identifying the problem and what the requirements are. And then there's ideating possible solutions, and only then do you build it. So we're looking at both these first two pages, sort of identify what the problems are. I've got some diagrams. So yes, at the moment, sharing, you can put your questions in the system question bank and then use them in different courses. But for a lot of institutions, this doesn't actually work for them. So what a lot of institutions actually end up doing is they just keep questions in the course question bank of their various courses, and where they need the same questions in a different course, they will export them and import them, and then you have two copies of your questions. And as a software developer, I know that whenever you have a copy of things you need to maintain, that is a big headache and causes problems. So if you spot an error, you have to remember all the places you copied that question and go and fix it. That's the picture of today. So to summarize what we think the requirements for a new question sharing system is, we think that a shared question bank needs to be a kind of thing that you can create the ones you want, not sort of tied to any specific part of Moodle. And then having created a question bank, you can make a particular question bank available to a particular group of users. And then when a user is building a quiz, they should be able to add questions from any area of shared question bank that they can access and add them to the quiz. If we're saying shared question banks are a kind of thing, you should be able to create one, give people access. There are other things we would expect in Moodle. For example, if you can create these things, you probably want to be able to back them up and restore them, and so on. While we do want to enable powerful sharing features, it's also not everyone needs this. Quite a lot of the time, we're just a teacher will be in a simple situation where a teacher just wants a quiz in their course, independent of everything else. They just want to be able to go, say, new quiz, add a new question, make a question, add a new question, make a question. So while some people want sharing, other people just want simple quizzes, and we must remember that and must go on supporting that. And there are the existing backup and restore bugs. We need to fix those. So that is our understanding of what the problem is we are trying to solve. I mean, do people feel we have correctly captured the problem? Or do you think, I see a few positive bits of body language coming back? Right, so this is the problem we think we're trying to go on, and then we've been ideating, well, sorry, keep forgetting I did these slides. This is my loose diagram of what it is we think we need. So sort of continuing the previous example, I sort of indicated that within Moodle you need to have these, we want to have, in this case, in this example, these two different question banks, but they're kind of grey boxes, it's not quite clear what they are. And the rest of the talk is me explaining what I think these things need to be. So, let me take you through my thought process as I contemplated these requirements and how we might solve them. Now, I mentioned that there's the requirement it should always be able to build a simple standalone quiz, and that suggests that the potential we have today that questions can be stored inside a quiz, we need to keep that. And there are other activities within Moodle that use the quiz. For example, at the Open University, we use the student quiz plugin, which is a very nice little add-on worth looking at if you don't know about it. And the student quiz is basically a bit of question bank with tools around it for students to do peer learning. And simply, as I was just saying, the quiz is like a bit of question bank with some quiz functionality. So I thought to myself, activities already have bits of question bank and we need to keep this. And also Moodle activities get you a lot of the other things we want. If you have an activity, you can create activities where you want them in your courses. You can control which users have permissions in activities. For example, in a forum, you could give a user moderator rights by assigning them the non-editing teacher. So that kind of flexibility of permissions exists. And activities, you can back them up and restore them. So activities give us a lot of the requirements we're trying to achieve, and they're a thing that already exists in Moodle. And we know we need activities with questions in. So do we need anything else? I said quizzes like question bank with quizzing features. What if we made an activity that was question bank plus nothing else? Do you need anything beyond that? Well, you do need this bit that when you're building a quiz, you can add from any question bank you have access to, not just the current limited range of places you can add questions from. So that was the conclusion, that doing this was the simplest possible way to meet all the requirements. But, well, anyway, here is a mock-up of how it might look in the simplest possible way it might be implemented. So here is a quiz with a couple of quizzes, and we've also added a question bank, and looks like any other activity with a particular icon. Probably students will never see it, so it is a bit weird. You have something on your course page that students will never see. And when you go into it, it's kind of a bit like a quiz. When you're in the quiz interface, you have question bank. Here in this, you have question bank, but you don't really have anything else. And then when you go to add to a quiz, your very familiar dialogue if you've used to building quizzes. It's showing you currently the questions from one question bank, the course question bank, and then there's a button there. You could go and select a different question bank and add questions from there instead. I haven't mocked up what happens when you click that button, but it'd be some sort of list of all the question banks you're allowed to access, and then you can change. So that summarizes what I've already explained. We'll make a new type of activity called shared question bank. We'll change add to quiz so you can add from any shared question bank. Obviously, there's a migration, but that should be a completely automated upgrade, as Moodle upgrades always are. And once we've done that, we can clean up a lot of the old mess in the code and fix the backup and restore bugs. That's the basic outline of the plan. And here are some of these schematic diagrams. So this is a direct translation of the previous example. The only thing is, to have a place to put these question bank activities, we've had to create some extra courses for language resources that are shared between different sites. Now, at least at the Open University, this is something we're already doing with other things, and I'm seeing some enthusiastic nodding there, and I've spoken to other people. This seems to be a pattern people are already using. I don't know if everyone's already using this, so this aspect doesn't really worry me. And of course, you don't have to do this. If you're currently in the situation where you only ever store questions in your course question banks, that will just continue to work pretty much the same. It'll just the question bank will now be an activity rather than a special built-in thing that's part of Moodle. And you may think for a course you only ever need one question bank, but once you realize that these are things you can create and remove, well, you can start thinking. So maybe at the moment you can only have one question bank in your course, but maybe in future it would be helpful to have two. Perhaps if you have a final exam, you just want to keep questions related to the final exam separate from the main course question bank so someone doesn't accidentally use them. Maybe you want to have different permissions there. So this is all about, this brings a lot of additional flexibility that could be used in various ways, and Moodle users tend to be very creative in how they use the features, even in ways that the original developers didn't think of. But there is this issue, suddenly this thing that's been in Moodle for a long time, suddenly it's going to start appearing as an activity on the course page. And normally things on the course page are things we're using to teach students. This is something only for teachers. Well, as I said there, is this just too weird? Is this an insurmountable UX weirdness that means we actually need to think again and find a different plan? That is the fundamental question. And I switch between thinking this is a neat and elegant solution to all our problems, or it's just a UX disaster waiting to happen. And this is the thing we would most like your feedback about. Because, of course, at the moment, in Moodle's navigation, we're familiar with finding the question bank here. We're thinking that probably we'll keep that link in the navigation, and that will take you to a page that will list all the question banks in the course. And probably in future, when you create a new course, you won't immediately have a question bank. But if you want one, we'll probably have a single button there, just create me a default course question bank. But if you're not going to use that, you don't ever need to create it. So that, again, simplifies things for people who don't need question banks. So, yeah, that is the sort of fundamentals of what we are proposing. And as I say, we would like your feedback. We'll have a chance any minute now, right in this room, to start the discussion. And Luca and I are here till the end of the moot, so come and grab us. And, of course, there are the forums on Moodle.org, and actually a week or so before this conference, a discussion spontaneously broke out. Someone asking, anyway, this has turned into a discussion of these proposals, so please, you can also continue the discussion on Moodle.org or reach out to us in any other way. So, just before we go to the discussion, I think Luca's going to show us the results of the Woo Clap.
Yeah. Yes. There is a tiny. It's really tiny. Thank you very much. Yeah, feel free to answer along. That's already a first part. Maybe, yeah, this is the VooClap code. It's also on the sheets. I try to read out the results if you'd like. It's not possible to switch to it and switch it back. We will then share that with you. So far, 42 answers, so 59% say yes to the question, does the organization share questions between courses using the system and course category question bank? It's a bit surprising to me. It's good, yeah. So it's sharing seems to be something that is a use case and a requirement. 55% say yes to the question, do you understand that feature? Course, do you understand that feature? Could you explain to someone how to set it up? So 45% say, and don't really understand, couldn't explain it. And is sharing questions between courses a feature your organization needs? That's the third question. There, 88% say yes, that's the case.
Wow, that's a big difference.
Yeah. Thoughts on what Tim, myself, the team that is thinking about this has shared here with you? Yes, please.
Okay, thank you for the talk. I have a suggestion and a question. I'll start with the suggestion with also sort of a comment. I'm not a fan of the question bank appearing directly on the course page. I think that's going to be incredibly confusing. I can already hear the professors in my office telling me, why is this here? Why is it happening? Have you considered, or maybe you should consider, having it as a block in the course? Because my professors already kind of use the block drawer as their like go-to course management thing. And so if the question bank appears over there, they can expand it or contract it. So it's still, it's not something that's going to be directly confusing to see, but those professors that do really want to use it can sort of optionally have it, right? So that's my suggestion.
So you are in that's too weird camp.
Yes.
Fair enough. And you're not the first person to say this to us, which is why we are consulting. Yeah, can I also just check which version are you still on Moodle 3 point something?
We're on 4.2.
You're on 4.2.
Yeah, we're on 4.2 as of August 1st.
You're using a theme with blocks, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Fine, thanks.
And then my question, so something that seems a little a potential for some sort of for some stickiness. If you have these question banks that are shared between many different courses, right? Ideally with many different professors, right? And this will especially be an issue with larger universities. What happens when you've got 5 quizzes with the same question in it, and then one of those professors goes in and says, oh, I want the wording to be different here. And then you've got active quizzes that now we're changing the text of those questions while students are taking them. So what's the thoughts there?
So I think the overriding thought is that any time you have a group of people using a shared resource, they need to actually be functioning as a group and communicating with each other, because it is a shared resource, so you kind of need collective ownership. Although we haven't got to the key sharing requirement yet, we have delivered a lot of other features in our ongoing project. So for example, now in the question bank, there is a column that shows you how many quizzes use this question and lets you see where this question is used, which helps you understand the implications of changing it. There are comments in the question bank, so there's conversation is really a people problem, but there's some technology to support it. And I was thinking there was the third thing, but I can't remember. Anyway, so that's my sort of, when you're building a quiz, the default option is that if the question is edited, students will get the new version, but you can actually fix a quiz that I want this version of this question to be used in this quiz. So
okay. Thank you.
Some of the tool support to help with that situation, yeah. So lots more questions.
So thanks for your talk and thanks for the initiative. I'm definitely one of these people that found the idea of having a question bank activity very weird, and I was totally opposed to it. But the more I thought about it, the more I liked it, and figured out that lots of the problems that we have in current projects would be solved by that, even though it feels weird at the first time. Actually, the first months I thought about that. My question would be, I totally agree with you that it is weird from a UX perspective, but have you thought and figured out whether having a section separate for teachers, like a teachers area, which could be navigated to differently, like this weird section 0, whether that could be a UX solution to your problem? Again,
that is a good idea, and you're not the first person to suggest that. And actually, an additional situation, talking about what people already do, I've known courses like at the Open University with groups of teachers where they will have a forum that is hidden from students to let the various teachers on the course communicate. So I think maybe having a special section in the course to hold these, what you might call teacher tools, because there are lots of tools. Moodle has lots and lots of tools, and they're really useful for education, but they can also be used for teams of teachers. So that is an idea we're thinking of. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Hi. So I'm also in the too weird camp, and I know that it's probably extremely hard to do technically, but I think the the best idea, the most intuitive thing for teachers was always, these are my questions, why are they not bound to my user in a way? But I guess it's impossible at this point to change the overall architecture in a way that would reflect that. And if that's not possible, then maybe the idea with activities is not so bad, but I'm not sure because the whole concept doesn't fit into my head right now. But could you have like central courses with a lot of these activities and just give the permissions on the activities to certain teachers and have these at the course that sits in a root category? Would that work at the moment?
That would certainly work with this proposal. The thing about this proposal is then it's like anything else in Moodle. You can set up what you need for your organization. We're not forcing you to follow any one pattern. So if that pattern, what you suggest would certainly be possible, and if that's what works for you, you can set that up. But if someone else needs something different, they don't have to have it tied to individual
users. Do you know,
users.
would that work at the moment, like with the current architecture?
With the current architecture, you can't do it. So with the current architecture, when you're building a quiz, you can only add questions from the course you're in, or the course category, or the system
Okay,
level.
so I would never be able to add,
you wouldn't be able to add from this other course.
activity in a different course.
Yeah.
Those would never show up.
Those would never show up, and that's one of the things we need to change.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Maybe the barrier to change this is lower than to change it so that questions are bound to a user.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, we only have time for one more question, maybe two if it's quick. So,
yeah, just continuing on from that last point, I was thinking along very much the same lines, it being tied to the user. And I think maybe a useful paradigm is the idea of kind of Google Drive, and they create resources there, they then add collaborators to that. Also at a corporate level, if somebody leaves the company, you can transfer ownership to somebody else. I think that at that level, for sharing across multiple courses, maybe even multiple faculties, it doesn't really fit nicely into courses or categories and things like that, as you're kind of acknowledging. So yeah, another vote there for maybe looking at the user context.
The issue with that is that it doesn't really fit with Moodle's model for managing permissions. In Moodle, you can give someone permissions on a course or an activity. To do that, we'd have to make like a category of questions in a question bank be a type of thing where you can assign permissions, and that's quite a big change that's only used for our... it could be... anything can be done if you write enough code, but that would be a relatively big change and a conceptual change from how Moodle currently works, whereas activities are already a concept in Moodle.
Sure.
So,
yeah, thank you.
Has that been the last? I don't want to finish without credits. Maybe I have done half. Very quick.
1 minute before it's Barbara's turn.
Okay, no. So let me finish with the credits. So we told you about the structure, what we think about it, who's the people behind. We are in close contact with HQ, of course, but our time is funded by our institutions, but we are not funding the work by Catalyst. This is funded by this fine organization. If you want to be a part of that, this qualifies as a research initiative, a research collaboration, pardon me. So in that it is value-added tax exempt. It's really easy to be contributing. My institution does make the role as bank. Obviously, we're Swiss, and we pay then Catalyst. But if you want to contribute, tell me, get in contact with me, get in touch. You might have a fund for quality assurance. There's maybe a special cashier for digitalization. You send me the amount, I can send out an invoice. We can do a contract even if you insist on doing it. Thanks to all these institutions, and let's keep that funded and keep that going along. Please contact me. Thank you.